On a dark day, a millionaire cried inconsolably at his wife's funeral, surrounded by everyone who looked at him with sorrow. However, a beggar woman, ignored by everyone, approaches and shouts, "Daddy, your wife is alive!" What seemed impossible becomes reality when he finally hears the truth that changes everything. In an instant, pain is replaced by hope, and the discovery reveals a story much deeper than he could have imagined. Get ready, because this story will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, like this video and comment on where you are watching from. On the autumn morning, the cemetery was shrouded in dense fog as Rafael Anders, one of the city's most influential businessmen, knelt before the coffin of his wife Clara Meyer Anders. His tears fell uncontrollably as he repeated to himself almost voicelessly, "Why, my God, why didn't you take me instead?" Clara's wake had been quick, the cremation even more immediate, a decision insisted on by the family doctor, Dr. Miguel Pascal, who had recommended it be urgent due to the state of her body after the car accident. For Rafael, the pain was unbearable. The loss of the woman he had spent 25 years with, the woman who had supported him through everything, from the difficult beginning of his career to his years of prosperity. He looked at the cold urn, wondering how it would be possible to go on without her. Benjamin Fisher, a driver and longtime friend, stood respectfully at a distance, watching his employer in his time of mourning. The guests had already departed, leaving only a few flower arrangements and the distant echo of the gravedigger's footsteps as they finished their work in another corner of the cemetery. "Mr. Raphael," Benjamin finally approached, "it's getting late. We should head home." Raphael didn't even respond, his eyes fixed on the newly placed tombstone. How could he return to that empty mansion, to the rooms that still held Clara's perfume, to the bed where her hair left marks on the pillow? However, an unexpected presence caught his attention. Sarah Roman, a small, ragged 8-year-old girl with a precocious wisdom in her eyes, was watching from afar, waiting for the right moment to arrive. She had tried to approach the event several times, only to be stopped by security. But her determination to deliver something crucial did not allow her to be easily dissuaded. When the cemetery emptied, she finally managed to approach Raphael and, in a soft voice, whispered, "Mr. Raphael, your wife is alive." Raphael, stunned, froze. The child's gaze, filled with such a powerful message, made his heart race. He reached out and, with trembling fingers, took what Sarah was handing him, a gold ring, the same one that Clara never took off. The words engraved on it, "Forever yours, 12/62/10, were an irrefutable confirmation. This ring could only be Clara's. The unique piece, handmade by a craftsman who was no longer with them, was not on his wife's body after the accident, as the medical report had confirmed. "Where did you get this?" Raphael asked, his voice cracking. Sarah, with surprising courage for her age, explained that 3 days earlier she had been sleeping under a bridge near the airport when a black car pulled up. The lady she was with, accompanied by a tall man in a dark suit, looked terrified. She gave him the ring and said that she should deliver the message to Raphael at the funeral. "Your wife is alive." Benjamin, who had now approached, looked at the girl suspiciously. "Mr. Raphael, you shouldn't listen to this child. She's just a street girl looking for attention or maybe money." Raphael stood up, staring at Benjamin firmly. "This ring is Clara's. No one could forge it." Turning to Sarah, he asked, "Did you see this woman's face? Are you sure she was my wife?" Sarah nodded, her small dirty hands gripping the hem of her worn t-shirt tightly. "She had sad eyes, sir, green eyes like a cat's, and a mole here." She pointed to her right cheek, exactly where Clara had a small birthmark. From then on, a whirlwind of questions took over Raphael's mind. Why this child? How had she known about the funeral? And why had Clara, if she was alive, asked her to deliver this message? Sarah then revealed that the lady had seemed very scared, and that she had given her one last piece of advice before leaving, telling her about an imminent danger. The man in the car, whom Sarah identified as someone named Elias, had pressured Clara to leave the country. "Elias Carmo?" Raphael asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. Elias was his business partner, college friend, and best man at his wedding. Sarah shrugged. I don't know his last name, sir. I just know she called him Elias and that he said, "We need to go now before they find us." Raphael exchanged a meaningful look with Benjamin, who had served the family for over a decade. If Elias was involved, and if Clara was truly alive, it meant the accident had been faked. But why? What danger could be so great that Clara would fake her own departure? Sarah, Raphael crouched down to the girl's level, do you have somewhere to stay? Is there someone to look after you? Sarah shook her head. I live where I can, sir. Sometimes under the bridge, sometimes at the train station when it rains a lot. Raphael made an instant decision. You're coming with us. If what you say is true, you're our only link to Clara. And if not... He hesitated. Well, no one should live on the streets, especially a child. As they walked to the car, Benjamin pulled Raphael aside. Are you sure, sir? Bringing a stranger home, especially now. She's not a stranger, Benjamin. She's our key to finding out the truth. Raphael looked at the ring in his hand, feeling the weight of the metal and the memories it carried. And if Clara really is out there, scared and in danger, I need to find her. That night in the Anders' imposing mansion, Sarah slept in a guest room, probably the first decent bed she had had in a long time. Raphael, in his office, turned the ring between his fingers, remembering the day he had put it on Clara's finger. The engraved code, 126210, was the date of their first meeting, June 12, 2010. No one but them knew what it meant. He picked up the phone, hesitated, and then dialed Elias's number. After 3 rings, the call went to voicemail. Raphael left a casual message mentioning coffee for the next day, avoiding any suspicion. Then he called Benjamin into his office. I want you to find out everything you can about Clara's accident. Police reports, witness statements, everything. And also, he paused, looking at the closed door to the room where Sarah slept. I want you to investigate this girl, where she came from, if she has a family, if anyone is looking for her. Do you think she might be lying, sir? Raphael sighed, running a hand through his grey hair. I don't know, Benjamin. But one thing is certain. This ring is Clara's. And if she's alive, I'll find her, no matter what. Meanwhile, in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, Elias Carmo stared at his phone, listening to Raphael's message. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking slightly. Beside him, a folder with documents bore the seal of the Alpha Consortium, one of the largest business groups in the country, led by Adrian Dupont, Raphael's father-in-law. Does he know something? Asked a female voice coming from the kitchen. Elias hung up the phone, placing it on the table. No. Impossible. We're safe for now, but we need to act quickly. The less time Clara spends in the country, the better for all of us. The woman approached, revealing herself to be Paula Carmo, Elias's wife and Clara's best friend since high school. Her eyes were swollen from crying. This is wrong, Elias. Raphael deserves to know the truth. The truth? Elias laughed bitterly. The truth would destroy him, Paula. And us too. No, it's better this way. Clara is gone, leaving us free to continue the plan. Paula walked away, looking out the window at the starry night. You've changed, Elias. I no longer recognize the man I married. At the Anders mansion, Raphael finally lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. His gaze was fixed on the ceiling, while his mind worked tirelessly, trying to connect the dots. Sarah's presence, the mysterious alliance, Elias's involvement somehow. What was Clara trying to tell him? What terrible secret could make her abandon everything, including the husband she loved? The first light of morning found Raphael already in his office, determined to unravel the mystery and find his wife. The hunt had only just begun. The sun had barely risen when Raphael, already dressed in his impeccable suit, came down the stairs of the mansion. He found Sarah in the kitchen, sitting shyly at the table while Rosa, the housekeeper, prepared a full breakfast for the girl. Good morning, Raphael said, trying to muster a smile. Did you sleep well? Sarah nodded, her eyes wide at the amount of food in front of her. I've never seen so much food, sir. Raphael felt a tightness in his chest. In his search for Clara, He had almost forgotten the brutal reality of the girl he had brought home. "Eat all you want and you can call me Raphael." Rosa gave him a disapproving look. "Mr. Raphael, don't you think it's better if we take this girl to a shelter or call the Child Protection Services?" "No!" Sarah exclaimed, dropping her glass of juice. "Please don't send me away. I need to help find Mrs. Clara." Raphael wiped up the spilled juice with a napkin. "No one's going anywhere, Sarah. You stay here until we resolve this situation." At that moment, Benjamin came in through the back door carrying a thick envelope. "Good morning, sir. I have obtained some documents regarding the matter we discussed yesterday." Raphael motioned for him to follow him into the office. Once the door was closed, Benjamin opened the envelope. "The official accident report is strange, sir. The car did indeed fall into the ravine and explode, but the circumstances, there's something that doesn't add up. Dr. Miguel Pascal was the one who identified the body, and he insisted on immediate cremation, citing advanced deterioration due to the impact and the flames." "Miguel," Raphael murmured. "He's been our family doctor for years. Why would he lie about something like that?" Benjamin continued. "There is more, sir. I found records of airline tickets purchased 3 days before the accident. One in Clara's name, the other in Elias Carmo's name, both bound for Rome." Raphael felt his blood run cold in his veins. Roma? Clara and Elias together? The possibility of betrayal crossed his mind, but he quickly dismissed it. He knew his wife. He trusted her blindly. There had to be another explanation. "I also discovered that the girl," Benjamin lowered his voice, "does not officially exist. No record of Sarah Roman in the systems. It's as if she was never born." Before they could continue their conversation, the doorbell rang. Rosa announced the arrival of Elias Carmo. Raphael took a deep breath, adjusting his expression to welcome the man who was now his prime suspect. Elias entered the office with the familiarity of an old friend, tall, elegant, with a confident smile. That now seemed false to Raphael. "Raphael, my friend," she hugged him tightly. "How are you feeling? The house seems empty without her, doesn't it?" Raphael studied his partner's face, looking for signs of nervousness or guilt. "Yes, very empty. Sit down, Elias. We need to talk about the company's business." For the next hour they discussed contracts and projects, while Raphael observed Elias's every reaction. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until Sarah walked into the office without knocking. "Uncle Raphael, Rosa said that—" She stopped abruptly when she saw Elias, her eyes widening in recognition. Elias frowned. "And who is this little girl?" Raphael improvised quickly. "This is Sarah, the daughter of a distant cousin. She's spending a few days with me." Sarah, displaying surprising maturity, extended her hand to Elias. "Nice to meet you, sir. You have a very nice black car." Elias hesitated for a moment before shaking the girl's hand. "Thank you, Sarah. How do you know what color my car is?" "I saw you coming through the window," she replied with an innocent smile, but her eyes conveyed another message to Raphael. After Elias left, Raphael and Sarah sat in the garden, out of earshot of the servants. "It was him, Uncle Raphael," Sarah confirmed. "The man in the car with Mrs. Clara, I'm sure of it." Raphael sighed, feeling the weight of the confirmation. "Sarah, I need you to tell me everything again. Every detail you remember from that night under the bridge." The girl closed her eyes, concentrating. "It was raining a little. I hid under the big bridge, the one near the airport. I saw headlights approaching and hid even more because sometimes the guards throw us out of there." Raphael nodded, encouraging her to continue. The car stopped. It was black, big and shiny. The lady got out first. She seemed to be crying. The man, the one who came here, got out later. They were arguing. She said she couldn't leave you, that she had to tell you the truth. He said it was dangerous, that you were both in danger. "So," Raphael pressed gently, feeling his heart race. "Then she saw me. At first I was scared. I thought they were going to throw me out or call the police, but then she came over, squatted down next to me and asked my name." Sarah smiled at the memory. "She had kind eyes even though she was scared. She gave me the ring and told me to give it to you at the funeral, and that you would understand. She said she was alive and would come back when it was safe." Raphael turned the ring between his fingers thoughtfully. Did she mention a specific place or a date? Sarah shook her head. No, but she did talk about a project. She said you should check out the kids' project, that the answer would be there. Raphael frowned. Children's project? Clara wasn't involved in any children's projects that I know of. At that very moment, in the luxurious penthouse of Adrien Dupont, Raphael's father-in-law, a tense meeting was taking place. Adrien, a 70-year-old man with power emanating from every gesture, stared at Elias coldly. So Raphael doesn't suspect anything. Elijah shook his head. Absolutely nothing. He's devastated over the loss of his wife, just as we planned. Adrien stood up, walking to the window that offered a panoramic view of the city. And my daughter? Safely, as we agreed. But... Elias hesitated. But what? Adrien turned around sharply. There's a complication. A street child. Clara spoke to her the night she left, and now that girl is in Raphael's house. Adrien swore under his breath. Find out what this child knows, and make sure she's not a problem. Late that afternoon, Raphael decided to visit Clara's office at the company, looking for clues about the mysterious children's project. Anders Emprendimientos occupied an entire floor in a commercial building in the city's financial center. Clara's office, who officially served as director of social responsibility, had been untouched since the accident. Raphael asked to be left alone in the room. He sat in Clara's chair, absorbing her essence that still permeated the room. He began to meticulously examine each drawer, each file. In the third drawer he found a discreet folder, without a label. Inside were documents related to a project called Seeds of Tomorrow, an initiative to build educational centers in underprivileged communities. Leafing through the documents, Raphael noticed something strange. The map of the areas benefiting from the project coincided exactly with regions where the Alpha Consortium, his father-in-law's company, was planning large real estate developments. Coincidence? Raphael doubted it. A photo slid out of the folder. Smiling children standing next to Clara in front of a small community center on the outskirts of town. On the back was a handwritten note. Our true legacy, Villa Esperanza, monthly visit, 3 p.m. Raphael put the photo in his pocket, feeling that he had found a crucial clue. As he left the building, he noticed a black car parked on the other side of the street. For a moment, he thought he saw Clara's profile in the back seat, but when he blinked, the car had already driven away. Back at the mansion, Raphael found Sarah playing in the garden with a stray cat that had appeared. The scene had a sweetness that made his heart ache. In just 2 days, the girl's presence had brought life to the house that had seemed dead since Clara's departure. Sarah, he called, showing her the photo, do you know any of these places or children? Sarah examined the image carefully. Her eyes lit up with recognition. I know this girl. She pointed to a little girl with braids. It's Joanna from Villa Esperanza. Sometimes I go there for the tutoring classes that Aunt Hannah gives. Raphael felt a surge of hope. Villa Esperanza, that's where we're going tomorrow. That night, Raphael had trouble sleeping. Thoughts and theories tangled in his mind. Why was Clara investigating her father's real estate projects? Why fake her own departure? And what was Elias's role in all of this? Meanwhile, in a hotel room in Rome, Clara Anders stared at her phone. Should she call Raphael, tell him the whole truth? But her father's words still echoed in her mind. If you tell Raphael, he'll be the next one to have an accident. Clara instinctively touched the place where her wedding ring used to. She had given her only link to Raphael to that sad-eyed girl, hoping that he would understand the message. Now she could only hope and pray that he would be shrewd enough to discover the truth without putting his own life at risk. The next day, the visit to Villa Esperanza would reveal secrets that would forever change the course of Raphael, Sarah, and Clara's story, secrets that were buried much deeper than any of them could imagine. The morning dawned with a light, persistent rain, as if the sky shared Raphael's anxiety. He watched the water trickle down his bedroom window, thinking about how dramatically his life had changed in just 3 days. The pain of losing Clara was now replaced by feverish hope and a determination to find her wherever she was. "Mr. Raphael," Benjamin knocked softly on the door. "The car is ready." Raphael nodded, adjusting his tie. He had opted for a more casual look for his visit to Villa Esperanza: jeans, a dress shirt, and a simple blazer. He didn't want to draw unnecessary attention in a neighborhood where a Rolex could be a month's salary for many. Sarah was already waiting for him in the living room, wearing new clothes that Rosa had bought the day before. The contrast between the ragged girl from the cemetery and this child in the flowery dress and combed hair was striking. "You look very pretty," Raphael complimented. Sarah smiled shyly. "Rosa said I need to look like a real niece so as not to raise suspicions." Raphael arched an eyebrow, surprised by the housekeeper's insight. "Rosa is right. Today we are uncle and niece visiting a social project." Benjamin drove in silence while Raphael explained the plan to Sarah. "When we get there, I want you to act naturally. Play with the other kids, talk to this Aunt Hannah. I'll try to find out more about Clara's involvement with the place." Villa Esperanza was located almost an hour from the city center in a region that had grown haphazardly in recent decades. Simple houses, many still unfinished, were huddled together on the slopes of a hill. At the highest point, a two-story building stood out, the community center. When Raphael's car stopped in front of the place, several children ran out, curious about the presence of the luxurious vehicle. Sarah got out first, being immediately recognized by some of them. "Sarah, it's been a while. I thought you had gone to another city," exclaimed a girl with braids, who Raphael recognized from the photo as Joanna. "I'm living with my uncle now," Sarah replied, with impressive ease, pointing at Raphael. The children looked suspiciously at the elegant man who got out of the car. Raphael suddenly felt out of place, as if he had entered a world completely alien to his own. A middle-aged woman with grey hair tied in a simple bun and kind eyes appeared at the door. "Children, let's continue the lesson inside. It's raining." Her gaze met Raphael's, and something like recognition flashed in her eyes. "You must be Raphael Anders," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Hannah Voss, the center's coordinator." Raphael shook his hand, surprised. "How do you know who I am?" Hannah smiled gently. "Clara talked a lot about her husband. Come, let's talk inside. Sarah, why don't you take the children to the reading room?" As Sarah walked away with her new friends, Hannah led Raphael into a small room that served as an office. The walls were covered with children's drawings and photographs of activities at the center. In many of them, Clara was smiling, surrounded by children. "How long has my wife been involved with this place?" Raphael asked, taking in every detail of the images. "Almost 2 years," Hannah replied, pouring plain coffee into ceramic mugs. At first she was just a donor, representing the company's foundation. Then she started getting involved personally, teaching tutoring, organizing events. The kids loved her. Raphael felt a pang of guilt. How could he not have known about this part of Clara's life? He was so absorbed in business that his wife had managed to build an entire parallel life without him noticing. "What about the seeds? Jove Tomorrow project? What can you tell me about it?" Hannah hesitated as if measuring her words. "It's an ambitious project. Clara planned to expand the center, build a technical school for young people, a day care center." She paused. "But there were complications." "What kind of complications?" Raphael pressed. "Territorial, mainly. This area," Hannah pointed out the window, where the neighborhood stretched as far as the eye could see, "is at the center of a real estate dispute. The Alpha Consortium wants to buy it all to build luxury condominiums." Raphael felt a shiver. The Alpha Consortium, led by his father-in-law. The pieces were beginning to fall into place. Was Clara investigating this? He asked, although he already knew the answer. Hannah stared at him for a long time, as if assessing his trustworthiness. "Mr. Anders, your wife has discovered something serious, something about the methods the consortium was using to pressure residents into selling their homes." At that moment, the door opened and Sarah ran in, panting. "Uncle Raphael, I found this in the archives." She held out a blue flash drive. "It has Aunt Clara's name written on it. Raphael picked up the object, feeling its weight as if it were much more than a few grams of plastic and metal. "How did you know where to look?" Sarah looked at Hannah, who nodded encouragingly. "Aunt Hannah took me there. She said you needed to see what was in store." Raphael looked at the coordinator, who didn't look away. "Clara left instructions. She said that if anything happened to her, I should give you this flash drive, but only if you came here on your own." Before Raphael could respond, Benjamin burst through the door. "Sir, we have company. Elias Carmo just arrived with 2 men. Raphael stood up, putting the flash drive in his pocket. "Hannah, is there a back exit?" Hannah quickly led them down a narrow hallway to a door that opened into an alley. "Take the alley to the right. It goes around the hill and out onto the main avenue. I'll be in touch." Raphael, Benjamin, and Sarah ran through the rain that was now falling heavily. As they turned the corner, they saw Elias and his companions entering the community center. Raphael felt a mixture of anger and fear. What was on that flash drive that was so important that Elias had followed it there? Back at the mansion, Raphael went straight to his office, locking the door behind him. He inserted the flash drive into his computer, eager to see its contents. What he found left him astonished. There were dozens of documents, manipulated contracts, falsified environmental licenses, records of payments to public officials in exchange for favors, all related to the Alpha Consortium's real estate project in the Villa Esperanza region. But the most shocking thing was a folder titled Operation Eviction. Inside was a detailed plan to force the residents of Villa Esperanza to leave their homes, cutting off essential services, intimidating them, and even sabotaging older buildings so that they would be declared at risk. All signed by Adrien Dupont and Elias Carmo. Raphael leaned back in his chair, feeling physically struck by the revelation. His father-in-law and his best friend had planned to destroy the lives of hundreds of families for profit, and Clara had found out everything. A video file caught his attention. When he opened it, Raphael's heart almost stopped. It was Clara, apparently recorded a few days before the supposed accident. "Raphael, if you're watching this video, it means you've managed to follow my leads." Clara looked haggard, dark circles under her ever-radiant face. "I discovered something terrible about my father's business. He and Elias are involved in a scheme to illegally expropriate the residents of Villa Esperanza. I confronted them and threatened to expose everything. In response, my own father threatened his life." She took a deep breath, holding back tears. "The only way to protect him was to agree to disappear. Elias suggested faking my departure in an accident so that no one would look for me. I'm leaving the country for a while until I gather enough evidence to bring them to justice without putting his life at risk." Raphael paused the video, feeling hot tears streaming down his face. Clara hadn't betrayed him or abandoned him. She was trying to protect him. He resumed the playback. "There's more involved in this than you might think, Raphael. Dr. Miguel Pascal, our family doctor, falsified the report on the body in the accident. Paula, Elias' wife, is secretly helping me, even though she fears for her own safety. And be careful with the security of the mansion. There are eyes and ears everywhere." Clara moved closer to the camera, as if she wanted to touch him through the screen. "I will leave clues that only you will be able to understand. When it is safe, I will come back to you. I love you, Raphael. Never forget that." The video ended, leaving Raphael in a state of mixed shock and relief. Clara was alive, and she loved him enough to sacrifice her own safety for his. A soft knock on the door brought him back to reality. "Mr. Raphael," it was Sarah's voice. "Is everything okay in there?" Raphael wiped his tears and opened the door. Sarah looked at him with concern, her eyes much more mature than her age suggested. "Did you find Aunt Clara on the computer?" Raphael nodded, unable to hide his emotion. "Yes, Sarah, and thanks to you, I now know she is safe." That night, Raphael couldn't sleep. His mind was buzzing with plans and possibilities. He needed to find Clara, but he also needed to unmask his father-in-law and Elias's criminal scheme. And above all, he needed to protect Sarah, who was now hopelessly involved in the conspiracy. The next morning, Raphael made 3 important decisions. First, he would contact a lawyer he completely trusted to begin a discreet investigation process. Second, he would increase the mansion's security, replacing the entire team with professionals who had no connection to his father-in-law. And third, he would begin preparations for a trip to Italy, where he suspected Clara was hiding. Meanwhile, in Adrian Dupont's luxurious penthouse, Elias nervously recounted the events of the previous day. Raphael was in Villa Esperanza. He talked to Hannah Voss. Adrian, who had been watching the city through the panoramic window, slowly turned around. His normally impassive face showed signs of concern. And? When we arrived, he was already gone. Hannah denied saying anything compromising, but Elias hesitated. "What the hell, man? Just say it," Adrian demanded, slamming his hand on the table. "The center's security cameras show the girl, Sarah, entering the file room with Hannah. We believe they may have handed something over to Raphael." Adrian closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to control his anger. "I told you to eliminate this child from the beginning. Now she's become a complication. What do you suggest we do?" "Intensify surveillance on Raphael. I want to know his every move, every phone call, every email. And as for the girl," Adrian looked coldly at Elias, "perhaps it's time to consider a more permanent solution to the problem." At the Anders mansion, oblivious to the threats that loomed over her, Sarah played in the garden, teaching tricks to the stray cat she had adopted. For the first time in years, she felt safe and loved. Raphael watched her from his office window, a new determination growing in his chest. He was no longer fighting just for Clara or for himself, but also for this child that fate had placed in his path. And in a small apartment in Rome, Clara was finishing dyeing her hair red, part of her, disguised as Maria Santos, a Latina art student. In her coat pocket she kept a yellowing photo of Raphael, her only link to the life she had left behind. "Hold on a little longer, my love," she whispered to the image. "We're almost there." A week after the discovery of the flash drive, Raphael, Benjamin and Sarah landed at Rome Fiumicino International Airport. To avoid attracting attention, Raphael had purchased the tickets under a false name through a discreet travel agency recommended by his lawyer, Davy Morgan, the only one besides them who knew the true purpose of the trip. "Remember, sir," Benjamin commented as they picked up their bags, "we must act like ordinary tourists. Any suspicious behavior could alert Mr. Dupont's contacts in Italy." Raphael nodded, adjusting the sunglasses he wore as part of his disguise. He had dyed his hair brown, grown a neatly trimmed beard, and was wearing casual clothes he would never normally choose. Sarah, officially adopted temporarily through a legal maneuver by David, seemed delighted by the adventure, her eyes shining with the excitement of her first international trip. "Where are we going to look for Aunt Clara first?" asked the girl as they got into the taxi. Raphael smiled gently. "We have some clues. The video showed a detail of a window overlooking the Colosseum, and we know she's using the name Maria Santos." The plan was simple, but it required caution. They would stay in a low-key hotel in the Trastevere neighborhood, off the main tourist trail but close enough to the historic center. From there, Benjamin would track down rental records and art school enrollments, places where Maria might be. The hotel was modest but charming, with pots of red geraniums in the windows and an interior courtyard where breakfast was served. Raphael chose his room carefully, on the top floor overlooking the street and close to the fire escape. Years of tense negotiations had taught him to always have an escape route. After they settled in, Raphael sent Sarah to bed, exhausted from the journey. Benjamin went out to do an initial reconnaissance of the area, while Raphael unfolded a map of Rome on the table. He marked with red circles the likely places where Clara might be: the university district, the art schools, the apartments with views of historical monuments. His cell phone vibrated. A message from David in Brazil. Elias's agency bought tickets to Rome, arrival expected in 48 hours. Raphael swore under his breath. Time was running out. Elias had probably found out about his trip and was now hot on his trail. They needed to find Clara before he arrived. The next morning, they split up to cover more ground. Benjamin would visit universities. pretending to look for courses for a niece, showing off digitally manipulated photos of Clara with her new red hair. Raphael and Sarah would tour the neighborhoods near the Colosseum, checking out cafes, galleries, and markets, places where Clara had always enjoyed spending time. "How will we know when we find her?" Sarah asked as they walked along Via dei Fori Imperiali. "She might be very different now." Raphael smiled, touching his own heart. "I'll find out, Sarah. Some connections can't be disguised." For 3 days, they methodically combed the city. Every square, every alley, every building with a view of the Colosseum. At night, they gathered at the hotel to share information and rethink strategies. Benjamin had obtained a list of Latinos who had enrolled in art schools in the past 6 months. There were 3 Marias, none with the last name Santos. On the afternoon of the 4th day, when discouragement was beginning to weigh heavily, Sarah insisted on visiting the National Roman Museum. "Aunt Clara liked museums, didn't she? You said she studied art history." Raphael agreed, more to please the girl than because he believed they would find clues there. The museum was relatively empty, with only a few groups of tourists scattered. Throughout the exhibition halls, Sarah ran from one antiquity to another, fascinated by the Roman statues and mosaics, while Raphael followed her absent-mindedly, his thoughts elsewhere. It was when they passed by the temporary art section that something caught Raphael's eye. An exhibition of contemporary paintings themed displacements. One canvas in particular seemed to call to him. It showed a woman with her back turned, looking out of a window at a Latin landscape, while holding a ring in her hands. The signature in the lower corner, Mess. Raphael approached, feeling his heart race. The technique, the colors, the way of capturing light, it was Clara's style. She had always painted as a hobby, but few knew about her talent. "Sarah," he called softly, "come see this." The girl came closer, studying the painting. "It's hers, isn't it? Aunt Clara's." Raphael nodded, looking for more information. A small, flak-red artist, Maria Santos, Brazil, part of the artistic residence of the convent of Santa Maria della Pace. "We think so," Raphael murmured, feeling a surge of emotion. "Benjamin, we need to go to that convent now." The convent of Santa Maria della Pace was located on the outskirts of Rome, about an hour's drive from the city center. It was an ancient complex of stone and terracotta, surrounded by cypress and olive trees. Part of it served as a monastery, the other as a cultural center and residence for artists. When they arrived, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange. An elderly nun greeted them at the gate, smiling kindly. "We'd like to speak to one of the artists in residence," Raphael explained in halting Italian. "Maria Santos." The nun nodded. "Ah, the Latina, a talented painter but very reserved. Come, I'll see if she's available." They were led to a small cloister with a central well, where the nun asked them to wait. Raphael felt his heart pounding against his chest. After so long, was he finally seconds away from meeting Clara again? Sarah held his hand, noticing his nervousness. "It's going to be okay, Uncle Raphael." Footsteps echoed down the stone hallway. Raphael turned, holding his breath. A slender figure appeared, dressed simply, with short red hair and thick-rimmed glasses. An effective disguise, but not for someone who knew every inch of that face. Clara. The name escaped like a prayer. The woman froze, her eyes widening in shock and then in recognition. For a terrifying moment, Raphael feared she would run away, but then tears began to stream down her face. "Raphael," she whispered, her voice cracking. "How did you find me?" "I followed my heart," he replied simply, opening his arms. Within seconds, they were in each other's arms, time and distance disappearing as if they had never existed. Raphael could feel Clara's body trembling against his, her scent, different but still essentially hers, flooding his senses. "I missed you so much," he murmured against her hair. "Me too," she replied, pulling back a little to look him in the eyes. "But how? Why?" Her gaze then fell on Sarah, who was watching the scene with teary eyes. "You," Clara acknowledged, kneeling down to the girl's level. "You delivered my message." Sarah nodded shyly. As promised, ma'am. Clara hugged the girl tightly. Thank you. You are the bravest girl I have ever met. Benjamin, who had been discreetly standing aside, approached. Miss Clara, I don't want to interrupt, but we need to get out of here. Elias Carmo bought tickets to Rome. He could arrive at any moment. Clara's face paled. Elias is coming. Then we don't have time to waste. She looked around nervously. I need to get my things, important documents. Give me 10 minutes. As Clara ran to her room, Raphael explained to Benjamin that they should change their original plan. Instead of returning to Brazil immediately, they would go to a neutral country where they could organize the evidence and contact the authorities safely. Clara returned with a small backpack and a thick folder. Here's everything, documents, evidence, recordings. Enough evidence to bring down my father and Elias. By the time they left the convent, night had fallen. Benjamin drove cautiously along the narrow path between the olive trees, his headlights illuminating only a few meters ahead. In the back seat, Raphael held Clara's hand as if he feared she might disappear again. Sarah had fallen asleep, her head resting on Clara's lap. How did you do it? Raphael asked. All this time, hiding, collecting evidence. Clara sighed, stroking Sarah's hair. It was terrifying at first. When I discovered my father's plans for Hope Village, I confronted him, naively thinking he would back down once he learned the human impact. Instead, he threatened me, not me, but you. Her eyes met Raphael's in the dim light. He said if I told you or anyone else anything, there would be consequences. He showed me pictures of you being followed, details of your routine. What about the accident? It was Elias's idea. He said it was the only way to give me time to collect enough evidence. Dr. Miguel provided an unidentified body from the morgue with physical characteristics similar to mine. The story of the advanced state of deterioration would explain the quick cremation. Raphael squeezed her hand. And all this time I thought that you were... Clara leaned in, kissing him softly. Never by choice, my love, never by choice. Suddenly, Benjamin slowed down. Sir, there's a car stopped ahead, blocking the road. Raphael turned quickly. Through the windshield, he saw the high beams of a vehicle parked horizontally on the narrow country road. The shadows of two men moved in front of the headlights. Turn around, Benjamin, Raphael ordered, sensing the impending danger. Use the secondary path we saw earlier. But before Benjamin could maneuver, another vehicle appeared behind them, blocking their retreat. They were surrounded. It's Elias, Clara whispered, her face drained of color. He found us. Raphael looked around quickly, assessing his options. To the left, the terrain sloped down toward dense woodland. To the right, just open fields with no cover. Benjamin, when I say so, accelerate toward the woods. The terrain is steep, but the car can handle the descent. Benjamin nodded, tense, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. Raphael turned to Clara, who was now gently waking Sarah. When we stop, grab Sarah and run into the woods. Don't look back, don't stop. There's a village about 2 kilometers from here. I saw it on the map. Find help there. And you? Clara asked, fear evident in her voice. Raphael smiled reassuringly, though his heart was racing. I'll be right behind you. Benjamin and I will cover you. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Someone would have to delay Elias and his men so that Clara and Sarah would have a chance to escape. Raphael was willing to be that someone. Now, Benjamin! Shouted Raphael. The driver slammed on the accelerator, swerving sharply to the left. The car skidded on the gravel, tilted dangerously, and then began to hurtle down the slope toward the woods, bouncing over rocks and bushes, the headlights cutting through the darkness ahead. Behind them, screams and the sound of engines indicated that the chase had begun. Raphael took one last look at Clara, memorizing her face in the flashing light. Whatever the outcome of this night, he had kept his promise. He had found Clara. Now, all that mattered was keeping her safe, even if it cost him everything. The car slid down the slope at an almost impossible angle, bouncing between trees and bushes. In the back seat, Clara held Sarah tightly against her chest, protecting her from the violent jolts. Raphael kept one hand on the roof of the vehicle, the other holding his cell phone, desperately trying to find a signal to activate the emergency plan he had agreed with Davi. Benjamin, with decades of driving experience and a background that included defensive driving training, maintained control of the vehicle with superhuman skill. His face was tense, focused, his eyes fixed on the road lit by the headlights that cut through the darkness. "There," Benjamin shouted, pointing to a clearing ahead. "We can stop there and continue on foot into the woods." When the car finally stopped, Raphael turned to Clara. "Remember the plan B we discussed at the hotel? It's time." Clara nodded, quickly, grabbing her backpack. "The villa, then the train to Florence, and from there to the Latin consulate." Raphael handed her a prepaid phone. "Use only this one. It's programmed with secure numbers, and take this." He pressed a small GPS device into her hand. "Hide it in Sarah's clothes. It's our insurance." Clara hesitated, tears in her eyes. "Let's go together, Raphael. I don't want to be separated from you again." Raphael held her face between his hands, memorizing every detail. "I'll be right behind you, but we need to split forces. Benjamin and I will lead them astray in another direction." Sarah, who had remained surprisingly calm until then, grabbed Raphael's arm. "Promise you'll come back, Uncle Raphael. Promise?" Raphael felt a lump in his throat. In such a short time, this child had become an essential part of his life. "I promise. Sarah, the three of us will stay together, it's a promise." After a quick and intense hug, Clara and Sarah disappeared into the darkness of the forest. Benjamin, who had moved to check the surroundings, returned with worrying news. "Lights approaching. Over the hillside, sir. 2 vehicles, maybe 3. They're following our trail." Raphael nodded, heading to the back of the car. He opened the secret compartment he had had installed before the trip and took out 2 bulletproof vests. "Put these on, Benjamin. Things could get complicated." Benjamin looked at the equipment in surprise. "You came prepared." "I learned from Clara to always have a plan B." Raphael smiled sadly, adjusting his vest. "Now let's leave a false trail in the opposite direction and then head to the alternate meeting point." As Benjamin started the car again, Raphael took one last look in the direction where Clara and Sarah had disappeared. "Stay safe, my love," he whispered into the darkness. Clara made her way through the forest, guiding Sarah along the nearly invisible trails. Years of recreational hiking in Mainam Latino state parks had given her a keen sense of direction, especially at night. The crescent moon provided only a dim light, filtered through the treetops. "I'm tired, Aunt Clara," Sarah muttered, tripping over a root. Clara caught her before she fell, lifting her into her arms. "Just a little longer, dear. We'll be safe soon." Sarah rested her head on Clara's shoulder, with the absolute trust of a child who, despite all the hardships of life, had not yet lost the ability to trust. "You love Uncle Raphael very much, don't you?" Clara felt tears well up, more than anything in this world. "Then why did you run away from him?" The question, so direct and innocent, struck Clara like an arrow. How could she explain to a child the complexity of that situation, the veiled threats, the constant fear, the impossible decisions? Sometimes, Sarah, when we love someone, we have to walk away to protect them. Not because we want to, but because it's the only way to keep them safe. Sarah was silent for a moment, processing the answer. "Like my mother did to me," she finally said in a voice so low that Clara almost didn't hear it. Clara stopped, surprised. "Your mother?" Sarah nodded against her shoulder. "She left me on the doorstep of a church when I was a baby. The nun who found me said there was a note saying that she loved me very much but couldn't raise me, and that one day she would come back for me." The girl swallowed hard. She never came back. Clara's heart sank. Now she better understood Sarah's precocious maturity, her ability to understand complex situations, her resilience in the face of adversity. She was a child who had grown up trying to decipher the greatest mystery of all, why she had been abandoned by the person who should have loved her unconditionally. "Some promises are hard to keep, Sarah, but I promise that from now on, you will never be alone again." In the open field, The headlights of 3 vehicles cut through the darkness, converging on the spot where Benjamin's car had stopped briefly. Elias Carmo, in the passenger seat of the first vehicle, watched the headlights of Raphael's car disappear over the horizon, heading down a secondary road. "They're trying to lose us," he said to the driver, a military-looking man whom Adrian Dupont had detailed for the mission. "Split up. 2 cars follow Raphael, 1 goes to the village. That's where Clara is going." The driver hesitated. "Mr. Carmo, what are the exact orders?" Elias stared at him coldly. "The orders are to retrieve the documents at any cost. As for Raphael and the others," he paused deliberately, "accidents happen, especially on Italian country roads." The man nodded, radioing the instructions. The vehicles split up, 2 following in the wake of Raphael's car, the third taking a shortcut toward the small village, nestled in the valley. In the getaway car, Raphael kept checking his rearview mirror, watching the headlights that were chasing them. "They're gaining ground, Benjamin." "We're almost at the turnoff, sir," Benjamin replied, referring to the place where they had planned to abandon the vehicle and follow a trail that would take them, by a much longer route, to the same village, where Clara and Sarah were heading. When they reached a fork in the road, Benjamin turned off his headlights and turned sharply right, entering a narrow path that was barely visible between the trees. After a few minutes, they reached a small abandoned cabin that they had identified on the map. "We'll leave the car here and continue on foot," Raphael instructed, grabbing a backpack with essential supplies. "It'll take them a few minutes to realize they've lost our trail and start searching the sides of the road." Benjamin nodded, checking the small handgun he carried, a precaution Raphael had initially questioned, but now seemed prudent. "For my own personal protection," Benjamin had explained. "I've never had to use it, but I always carry it when we travel internationally." They walked along the narrow trail, illuminated only by the dim light of the stars. Raphael checked the GPS occasionally, making sure they were on the right path. His thoughts were with Clara and Sarah. Had they made it to the village? Would they be safe? The plan was to meet them at the village's small train station, where they would catch the first train of the morning to Florence. From there, they would head to the Latin consulate, where Davi, working remotely from Brazil, had already contacted a trusted official who would help them with the necessary documentation and diplomatic protection. A distant rumble made Raphael stop. "Did you hear that?" Benjamin frowned. "It looks like an explosion." A flash of light briefly illuminated the horizon behind them, in the direction where they had left the car. Raphael felt a chill run down his spine. "They blew up our vehicle." "To eliminate evidence," Benjamin commented darkly. "That means they're no longer concerned with keeping up appearances. The situation is more serious than we imagined." Raphael quickened his pace, now certain that they were dealing with people willing to do anything. "We need to get to the village before them. If they get to Clara and Sarah first." He didn't finish the sentence, but the fear was evident in his voice. Benjamin, ever the loyal protector, placed a firm hand on his boss's shoulder. "We'll make it, sir. Mrs. Clara is smart, she knows how to hide, and we have the advantage of GPS." Raphael checked the device on his phone. The dot representing Sarah was moving toward the village, but along a different path than they had initially predicted. "They're deviating from the main route. Clara must have sensed the danger." In the dense forest, Clara had indeed altered her route. Years of volunteering in remote areas had given her a keen instinct for danger, and something told her the main trail might be guarded. Sarah, now more awake, walked beside her, holding her hand tightly. "Aunt Clara," the girl whispered, "there are people following us." Clara froze, listening intently. At first she heard nothing but the nighttime sounds of the forest. Then she caught it, the faint snapping of twigs, not random like an animal would be, but rhythmic, like human footsteps trying to be silent. "Let's go this way," he murmured, pulling Sarah toward a mossy rock formation. Between the rocks was a small cavity, just big enough for the 2 of them. "Stay still, no matter what happens." Sarah nodded, her eyes wide and frightened in the dim light. Clara covered them both with the dark coat she was wearing, forming an improvised camouflage. Through a small opening, she watched the trail. 2 men appeared, moving with the precision of trained professionals. They wore dark clothing and, most alarmingly, carried what appeared to be silenced weapons. They spoke in low voices, in Italian. But Clara could understand enough. The woman and child cannot reach the village. The chief was clear without witnesses. Clara's blood ran cold. These weren't just stalkers, they were murderers. Her father had crossed a line she had never imagined possible. This was no longer just corruption or illegal expropriations. Adrien Dupont was determined to silence his own daughter permanently. The men passed within a few meters of her hiding place, continuing along the path. When the footsteps had moved far enough away, Clara let out the breath she hadn't even realized she was holding. "Aunt Clara," Sarah whispered, trembling. "Are they going to hurt Uncle Raphael?" Clara hugged the girl, trying to convey a sense of security she didn't feel. "Raphael is smart and strong. He knows how to take care of himself." She looked ahead, making a decision. "We can't go to the village now. We need to change. Our plan." Consulting the North Star and her memory of the map of the region, Clara reoriented herself. There was an ancient monastery about 3 miles away, in the opposite direction of the village. Perhaps they could find refuge there until dawn. Meanwhile, Raphael and Benjamin had detected the change in direction in the GPS signal. "They're heading north, not toward the village," Raphael noted, confused. Benjamin studied the map on his own phone. "There's a monastery in that direction. Maybe they decided it's safer." Raphael quickly considered his options. "Let's follow the sign. If Clara changed course, there must be a good reason." They changed direction, now moving over rougher terrain uphill. The path was more difficult, but it also offered more cover from potential pursuers. In the third car, which had gone straight to the village, Elias Carmo received discouraging news from the men in the forest. "What do you mean they lost their trail? They're just a woman and a child." "We're following, sir," came the radio reply, "but they've veered north, toward the monastery." Elias swore under his breath. He knew Clara well, smart, adaptable, always with alternative plans. That was what made her a dangerous adversary. And now, with the evidence she had collected, the situation was even more serious. "Change direction," he ordered. "We're going to the monastery, and remember, we need the documents intact." At the monastery of St. Benedict, Sister Laura was preparing for the first services of the day when she heard urgent knocking at the gate. It was unusual to have visitors at that hour. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon. When he opened the small window in the gate, he saw a woman with disheveled red hair and a small girl, both exhausted and with clothes dirty, with mud and leaves. "Please," the woman said in hesitant Italian, "we need help, we are in danger." Sister Laura, who had devoted 60 of her 80 years to religious life, recognized genuine despair when she saw it. Without question, she opened the gate and led the 2 visitors into the safety of the thick walls of the ancient building. In the dining room, he served them hot tea and fresh bread, watching as the woman tried to explain her situation in a mix of Italian and English. Clara gave a simplified version. She was running away from dangerous people. She needed temporary refuge. Her husband was on his way to meet her. "Do you have a phone?" Clara asked, showing the prepaid device Raphael had given her. "I need to make a call. It's urgent." Sister Laura nodded. "We have a phone in the Mother Superior's office. Come with me." While Sarah was being cared for by another nun, Clara made 2 crucial calls. One to the emergency number Raphael had programmed, connecting her directly to Davy in Brazil, informing him of the change in plans, and another to a contact she had kept secret even from Raphael, an Italian investigative journalist named Fiona Ricci, who had become interested in her allegations months earlier. "Fiona, it's Maria, or rather Clara Anders. Remember the material. I sent you about the real estate scheme. The situation has escalated. I'm at St. Benedict's Monastery with my husband on the way and armed stalkers following us. If anything happens to me, all the evidence is on this flash drive." As she quickly explained the details to the journalist, Clara looked out the office window, which offered a sweeping view of the valley. Below, that was when she saw it, 2 vehicles driving up the winding road that led to the monastery. "They're coming," Fiona said, her voice tense. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hold on." After hanging up, Clara ran to find Sister Laura. "We need to hide. Dangerous men are coming up the hill." The nun nodded without hesitation. "Come, we have a place. During World War II, this monastery hid many people persecuted by the fascists." He led Clara and Sarah through a series of ancient corridors to a barely visible door behind a heavy oak cabinet. The door opened onto a staircase that led down into the monastery's catacombs, a maze of tunnels and chambers carved into the solid rock centuries before. "You'll be safe here," Sister Laura said, handing them a lantern. "I'll leave the door unlocked for your husband when he arrives." Clara hugged the old woman. "How can I thank you?" The nun smiled serenely. "Protecting the innocent, as you already do. Now go, and may God protect you." Raphael and Benjamin reached the edge of the forest surrounding the monastery, just as the first rays of sunlight illuminated the ancient stone building. From their elevated position, they could see the 2 vehicles already parked in the outer courtyard and armed men surrounding the site. "We're late," Benjamin muttered in distress. Raphael studied the monastery, looking for any sign of Clara or Sarah. The GPS indicated that they were inside and still moving, which was a good sign. "No," he replied with determination. "We're just in time. Look." A third vehicle was approaching on the main road, a van bearing the logo of an Italian television station. Out of it, a news crew led by a middle-aged woman with grey hair and a resolute posture. "Who are they?" Benjamin asked. Raphael narrowed his eyes, recognizing the investigative reporter he occasionally watched on international news. "Our salvation, perhaps. Clara must have contacted them." The presence of the reporting team caused visible consternation among Elias's men. Cameras turned on. The journalist began to question who they were, what they were doing there, and why they were armed on religious property. "This is our chance," Raphael concluded. "While they're distracted by the press, we can go in through the back. Come on." As the confusion unfolded in the main courtyard, Raphael and Benjamin skirted the perimeter of the monastery, finding a less guarded side entrance. With the skill of someone who had spent years participating in tense negotiations where every body movement mattered, Raphael crept up to the door, testing it. To his surprise, it was unlocked. Inside, they were greeted by an elderly nun who seemed to have been waiting for them. "You must be Raphael," she said in Italian. "Your wife said you would come. Quickly, follow me." As they were led through the ancient corridors, Raphael asked, "How did you know I was her husband?" The nun smiled serenely. "By your eyes, you have the same look of someone who would do anything to protect the one they love." They reached the hidden door, which the nun opened to reveal the descending staircase. "They are down there. Go. I will pray for you." Raphael and Benjamin walked down the stairs, their cell phone flashlights lighting the way. The air was cold and damp, heavy with the weight of centuries. They called out for Clara and Sarah, their voices echoing in the ancient tunnels. It was Sarah who answered first, her small voice reverberating off the stone walls. "Uncle Raphael, we're here." Following the sound, they reached a larger chamber where Clara and Sarah were waiting for them. The reunion was brief, but intense, tight. Hugs, restrained tears, the silent confirmation that everyone was okay. "The journalist has arrived," Raphael informed. "Was it you who called her?" Clara nodded. "Fiona Ricci. She's been investigating my father for months. I sent some of the evidence to her as insurance in case something happened to me." "Smart as always," Raphael smiled, hugging her again. "And now what's the plan?" "Now," Clara replied with renewed determination, "we finish what I started. It is time for Elias and my father to face justice." As the small group discussed strategy in the ancient tunnels above them, in the monastery courtyard, Elias Carmo faced a media nightmare. Fiona Ricci, armed with preliminary documents provided by Clara months earlier, confronted him with pointed questions about the illegal expropriation scheme, the threats, the hoax of the accident. The cameras captured every drop of sweat, every hesitation, every furtive glance of the businessman who saw his world crumble live for all of Italy to see. And behind the scenes of power in the capital, Adrian Dupont received the live broadcast, understanding that the empire he had built was about to collapse, destroyed not by enemies, but by the very daughter he had tried to silence. The sun was already setting when Raphael, Clara, Sarah, and Benjamin emerged from the monastery's catacombs. The courtyard, once the scene of a tense confrontation, was now bustling with the activity of Italian police teams. Elias Carmo, visibly dejected, sat in the back of a police car, his hands handcuffed in front of him. When he saw Clara, his eyes widened in a mixture of surprise and defeat. Fiona Ricci rushed toward them, camera and microphone in hand. "Clara, thank God you're okay." The police arrested Elias and his men for illegal possession of weapons on Italian territory and attempted trespassing on religious property. But this is just the beginning. Clara nodded, her composure returning after hours of adrenaline and fear. "I have all the evidence here," she said, clutching the folder she carried tightly to her chest. "Documents, recordings, financial records, everything needed to expose the entire scheme." An Italian police officer approached, introducing himself as Inspector Vittorio Conti. "Signora Anders, we need your full statement, and this evidence will be crucial for international cooperation with the Latin authorities." Raphael rapped, his arms protectively around Clara's shoulders. "My wife is exhausted, Inspector. We've been through an extremely traumatic situation. Would it be possible for you to give your statement tomorrow after you've had a proper rest?" The inspector studied the group, the visibly tired woman, the small child clinging to her hand, the businessman determined to protect his family. His gaze softened. "I understand perfectly. I will arrange for a police escort to take you to a secure hotel in Rome. Tomorrow morning, when you are rested, we can proceed." Clara smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Inspector. There's just one thing that can't wait." She held out a flash drive. "These are digital copies of everything. I suggest you send them immediately to the proper authorities in Brazil. My father has powerful connections. The faster this information gets out, the less chance there is of it being suppressed." The inspector nodded, understanding the urgency. "I will do it personally, Mrs. Anders." Fiona approached again. "Clara, would you like to do an interview? Your story needs to be told." Raphael intervened again. "Fiona, we appreciate your crucial assistance indeed, but we need a moment to compose ourselves. Tomorrow, after the official statement, Clara will be happy to speak with you." The journalist agreed, respecting the limit. "Of course, in the meantime, we'll go live in an hour with what we already have. Half of Italy is already watching live." On the way to Rome, escorted by 2 police cars, the group finally allowed themselves to relax a little. Sarah fell asleep almost instantly, her head resting on Clara's lap. Benjamin drove in silence, while Raphael and Clara exchanged emotional glances. "Is it really over?" Raphael asked softly, holding Clara's hand. She sighed, running her fingers through Sarah's hair. "The physical danger part, yes. But what comes next will be just as difficult in other ways. Facing my father in public, in court, in the media, exposing decades of corruption and manipulation, and then—" her voice trailed off. "Then rebuilding our lives." Raphael squeezed her hand gently. "We'll do this together, every step." Clara looked at Sarah, who was sleeping soundly. "What about her? After all this is over, what will happen to Sarah?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. In just a few days, the child who had entered their lives so unexpectedly had become an indispensable part of it. The idea of them being separated seemed unthinkable now. "We will find a solution," Raphael promised, "together." At the luxurious hotel in central Rome, where they were staying under police protection, Raphael made a crucial call to Davi in Brazil. The lawyer listened attentively to the account of events. "Things are exploding here," Davi reported. "The Fiona Ricci story has been picked up by all the major Latin channels. Elias being arrested in Italy, Clara rising from the dead. It's the scandal of the decade. Adrian Dupont is cornered." "How did he react?" asked Raphael. He denied everything, obviously. But the first documents have already been leaked, and the public prosecutor's office is acting with impressive speed. Search and seizure warrants have been issued for the offices of the Alpha Consortium. It is a matter of hours until he is summoned to testify. Rafael felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. What about Villa Esperanza? Are the families safe? Better than that, Davy replied with satisfaction in his voice. The judge issued an injunction suspending any expropriation or intervention in the area until the final judgment of the case. Hannah Voss is coordinating a task force of popular lawyers to ensure the definitive regularization of possession for the residents. When he hung up, Rafael found Clara on the suite's balcony, watching the lights of Rome. Sarah was sleeping peacefully in the bedroom, exhausted by the day's events. "It's strange," Clara commented as he joined her. "I spent months hiding in this city, separated from you, fearing for the future. And now, we're together again, looking at the same sky." Rafael hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "We will never be apart again, no matter what happens." The next day, after a hearty breakfast, Clara gave her full statement to the Italian authorities. For hours, she meticulously detailed every aspect of the corruption scheme, every threat, every step of her forced escape. Rafael remained by her side the entire time, offering silent support and occasionally adding additional information. Sarah stayed with Benjamin, exploring the hotel gardens under close police surveillance. In the afternoon, as promised, Clara gave an exclusive interview to Fiona Ricci. With eloquence and controlled emotion, she told her story to the world. She spoke of discovering corruption in her father's company, the threats, the painful decision to fake her own departure to protect Rafael, the months spent in exile collecting evidence. She spoke of Sarah, the unlikely messenger who had brought the family together again. "Why did you decide to come forward now?" Fiona asked. "Why didn't you stay in hiding until you gathered more evidence?" Clara looked at Rafael and Sarah, who were watching the interview out of the camera's reach. "Because I realized that some things are more important than personal safety. The truth, justice for hundreds of families who would be displaced, the future of the children of Villa Esperanza. And because I understood that we cannot fight darkness by hiding from it, we need to face it with light." The interview was broadcast simultaneously in Brazil and Italy, reaching record audiences. On social media, the hashtag Duce Carla Vive became a global trend within minutes. Clara's face, her story of courage and sacrifice, inspired thousands of people to share their own experiences with real estate corruption and forced evictions. In the capital, Adrien Dupont sat in his office watching the interview, his face impassive, but his knuckles white from gripping the arms of his chair. Beside him, his lawyer talked incessantly about defense strategies, settlement possibilities, ways to minimize damages. But Adrien barely listened. His eyes were fixed on the image of his daughter on the screen, determined, courageous, incorruptible. So unlike him. When the doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of the police with the warrant for his arrest, Adrien Dupont offered no resistance. As he was escorted out of the luxurious building where he had spent decades building his empire, a reporter shouted, "Mr. Dupont! What do you say about the accusations made by your daughter?" Adrien paused for a moment, looking directly into the cameras. "I say she is truly a Dupont, more so than I ever was." In Italy, 3 days after Elias's arrest and the bombshell interview, Rafael, Clara and Sarah were preparing to return to Brazil. Italian authorities, in cooperation with Interpol and the Latin American Federal Police, had established a safe corridor for their return, ensuring continued protection. The day before departure, while Sarah slept, Rafael and Clara talked on the hotel terrace. "I'm afraid of what we'll find when we get back," Clara admitted. "Facing my father in person, the trials, the press, it'll be like reliving it all over again." Rafael held her hands. "You're not alone this time. I'll be by your side every step of the way." "And Sarah?" Clara asked, her voice soft. "What will happen to her when this is all over?" Raphael smiled, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "That's why I asked David to send this urgently. These are the preliminary forms for adoption." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Do you want to—" "I want us to be a family," Raphael finished. "You, me and Sarah, if she wants, of course. But after everything we've been through together, I can't imagine our life without her." Clara hugged him tightly, tears now flowing freely. "Me neither. She filled a void I didn't even know existed in our hearts." The next morning, while packing their bags, Raphael and Clara talked to Sarah about the possibility of adoption. The girl's reaction was one of initial shock, followed by such pure and intense joy that it brought tears to the eyes of the adults. "Do you really want to be my parents?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain, as if she feared it was just a dream. Clara knelt down to the girl's level. "We want to, Sarah, if you'll have us." Sarah hugged Clara with all the strength in her little arms. "I've always dreamed of this," she whispered, "having a real family." As they boarded the plane that would take them back to Brazil, Clara looked out the window at the city of Rome, which had been her refuge and prison for the past few months. She felt a surprising peace, despite the challenges that still awaited them. Beside her, Raphael held her hand tightly. In the seat next to the window, Sarah gazed in wonder at the clouds, pointing out imaginary shapes. "Look, Mommy," she said, the word new and precious on her lips. "That cloud looks like a wedding ring." Clara smiled, looking down at the finger, where she would soon wear her original wedding ring again, the symbol of a love that had overcome separation, danger, and even false departure. "Yes, my dear, just like a wedding ring." In the capital, the news headlines read, "The return of Clara Anders, the woman who came back from death to expose corruption." On the streets of Villa Esperança, residents prepared an emotional welcome for the woman who had risked everything to protect their homes and their future. And at the airport, a discreet security team waited to escort the Anders family, now joined by a brave little member, into the next chapter of their lives. A year had passed since Clara, Raphael, and Sarah had returned to Brazil. The Anders mansion, once a cold and ostentatious space of power and wealth, had been transformed. The gardens, once impeccably trimmed into artificial shapes, now grew with controlled freedom, dotted with beds of wildflowers that Sarah had helped to plant. The interior of the house had changed too. Formal artwork had given way to colorful, framed drawings, family photographs, and, proudly displayed in the main living room, the paintings that Clara had created during her exile in Rome. On that sunny spring morning, the mansion was abuzz with preparations for a special celebration. Staff moved efficiently, setting tables in the garden, hanging colorful ribbons from the trees, and arranging a centerpiece where a three-tiered cake waited to take center stage. "Sarah, honey, you need to stay still so I can finish fixing your hair," Clara said, trying to contain her daughter's enthusiasm as she couldn't stop fidgeting in front of the mirror. "But I'm so excited, Mom," Sarah replied, her eyes shining with excitement. "It's the most important day of my life," Clara smiled, finishing the elaborate braid adorned with small white flowers. "I know it is, my love, and it's almost perfect." The final adoption hearing had taken place the week before, officially finalizing the process that made Sarah an Anders not only in her heart but also in her legal documents. Today's party celebrated not only that, but also Sarah's 10th birthday, her first birthday as an official part of the family. Raphael appeared at the bedroom door, already dressed in a light blue suit that contrasted with his tanned skin. The last year had visibly rejuvenated him. The worry lines on his face had softened, his grey hair now blended with the original brown he had chosen to keep after his Italian adventure. "Are my two favorite women ready? Guests will begin arriving in half an hour." Sarah ran to hug him, taking care not to wrinkle the yellow dress she had chosen especially for the occasion. "Dad, do you think Joanna will like the party? And Aunt Hannah? And all the children in the village?" Raphael lifted her into his arms, something he could still do, even though Sarah was getting taller every day. "You'll love it, Princess, especially the pony ride part that you don't know we organized yet." Sarah's eyes widened. Ponies? Really? She looked to Clara for confirmation. Clara shook her head, feigning exasperation. It was supposed to be a surprise, Raphael. He shrugged, smiling. I couldn't resist. Did you see her face? The doorbell rang, announcing the first guests. Sarah jumped out of her father's arms and ran to the window. It's them! The buses from Villa Esperanza have arrived. Indeed, 2. School buses had stopped in front of the mansion, and dozens of children were getting off under the supervision of Hannah Voss and other educators from the now expanded Villa Esperanza Community Center. The Anders mansion's latest transformation was becoming evident. The high walls that had once isolated the property from its neighbors had been replaced by lower, more inviting fences. The massive iron gates, once permanently closed, were now open, symbolizing the family's new philosophy. Raphael and Clara came down to greet the guests, Sarah skipping ahead of them. Hannah Voss, with her eternal grey bun and gentle smile, was the first to embrace them. It's wonderful to see this house so full of life and joy, he commented, looking around at the transformed gardens. Benjamin, now not only a driver but also the logistics manager for the Sementes du Armagnac project, coordinated the arrival of the buses, ensuring that all the children had access to the toys and activities spread throughout the garden. As the children ran around exploring the space, other guests began to arrive. David Morgan, the lawyer who had been instrumental in the family's entire legal journey, arrived with his wife. Fiona Ricci, who had flown in especially from Italy for the occasion, brought with her the physical proof of her work, a newly published book entitled The Truth Revealed, The Anders Case and Real Estate Corruption in Brazil, now in its 3rd edition. Among the guests, a surprising figure appeared. Paula Carmo, Elias's ex-wife, who had collaborated extensively with the investigations after the scandal. Her testimony had been crucial in mapping the extent of the corruption network. Now rehabilitated and away from her dark past, she had become an important ally in the social work of the Anders Foundation. Clara, Paula approached timidly, still, carrying the weight of guilt from years of silence. The place is magnificent. Clara hugged her old friend with genuine affection. Thank you for coming, Paula. It means a lot to us, especially to Sarah. In fact, Sarah adored Paula, who in recent months had become a sort of step-aunt, always bringing educational gifts and spending hours helping her with piano lessons. As the party gained momentum, Sarah ran from one group to another, proudly introducing her new school friends to the children of Villa Esperanza. The integration that Clara and Raphael so desired to foster happened naturally through her, a bridge between social worlds that rarely mixed in stratified Brazil. A particularly touching moment occurred when Joanna, the braided girl from Villa Esperanza, who had been Sarah's first friend, presented her with a handmade gift, a photo album documenting the community's transformation over the past year. Look, Sarah, she pointed out, flipping through the pages, this is the new computer center your parents helped build, and here's the sports court, and look, this is me winning the essay contest Aunt Clara organized. Sarah hugged the album to her chest, her eyes brimming with tears. Here's the best gift, Joanna. In the center of the garden, a makeshift stage had been set up. When all the guests were present, Raphael went up, asking for everyone's attention with a gesture. Friends, family, children, he began, his voice slightly amplified by the microphone. I thank you all for being here on this very special day for our family. Today we celebrate not only Sarah's birthday and her official adoption, but also a year of profound transformations in our lives. He paused, searching the crowd for Clara and Sarah, finding them holding hands in the front row. A little over a year ago, I thought I had lost everything. My wife, my purpose, my faith in people. I was alone in a house that was too big, empty, of meaning. Her voice broke slightly, emotion evident. Then 2 extraordinary women entered, or in Clara's case, re-entered, my life. One 9 years old and wise enough to challenge an empire on principle. The guests chuckled softly at the mention of Sarah's 100-year-old wisdom, and she smiled brightly. What we have experienced in the last year has transformed not only our personal lives, but the way we see our role in society. Andes Empreendimentos is no longer just a construction company focused on profit, but a company committed to sustainable development and decent housing. The Sementes do Amanhã Foundation, led by Clara, is no longer a small social project, but a transformative force. In communities like Vila Esperança, Rafael made a sweeping gesture, encompassing the entire garden. This house, once a symbol of isolation and privilege, now opens its doors to celebrate new possibilities, and none of this would have been possible without the courage of a little girl who, in a misty cemetery, approached a devastated man to give him not just a ring but a second chance. He stepped down from the stage and walked over to Sarah, kneeling before her. "Sarah Anders, you have not only added your name to our family, but you have brought new meaning to it, and for that, we have a special gift for you." Raphael made a sign, and Benjamin appeared leading a white pony with a pink ribbon around its neck. Sarah screamed with joy, running to the animal that now belonged to her. But the surprise didn't end there. "And there's more," Raphael continued, returning to the stage. "In honor of our daughter and all children who, like her, deserve a fair chance in life, we are announcing today the creation of the Sarah Anders Institute, an educational center that will provide quality, full-time education to children from underprivileged communities, starting with Vila Esperança." The applause was thunderous. Hannah Voss, who had not been informed beforehand, covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming freely down her face. Clara joined Raphael on stage, bringing Sarah with her. The institute will begin operating next school year with an initial capacity for 200 students. Our goal is to expand to 1,000 places in the next 5 years and replicate the model in other communities. Sarah, still in awe of the pony and the announcement of the institute that bore her name, took the microphone. "Can I say something?" she asked shyly. Raphael and Clara nodded, surprised by the initiative of their daughter, who was normally so shy in public. "I just wanted to say thank you," Sarah began, her voice small but firm. "Before I met you, I had nothing. I slept under bridges and walked the streets alone. I had given up hope of finding a family." She paused, wiping away a tear. "But now I have everything I ever dreamed of, and I want every child to have what I have. Not the presents or the big house, but people who love them and believe in them." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even the traditionally reserved staff of the mansion were openly moved by the girl's words. "That's why," Sarah continued with surprising eloquence for her age, "I want to dedicate my birthday to all the children who are still alone. And I promise that when I grow up, I will continue the work my parents started." Clara hugged her daughter, unable to hold back her tears. Raphael joined in the embrace, forming a perfect circle of love and shared purpose. The party continued. All afternoon, with games, music, performances by the children of Vila Esperança, and, to the delight of all the little ones, pony rides led by Sarah, who insisted that each child had their turn. As the sun began to set, dyeing the sky-orange tones reminiscent of the Italian frescoes that Clara so admired, the guests gathered for the big moment, the birthday cake. Sarah, flanked by her parents, friends from the village and school, made her wish in silence before blowing out the 10 candles. Applause and cheers echoed through the garden. "What did you order?" Joanna asked curiously as Raphael cut the cake. Sarah smiled mysteriously. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true, but it's about making a difference in the world." Later, when most of the guests had left and the sky was getting dark, Clara found Raphael and Sarah sitting on the garden swing, watching the first stars appear. "It was the best day of my life," Sarah declared, her head resting on Raphael's shoulder. Clara sat down next to them, completing the trio. "Mine too, dear." Raphael reached out, encircling them both. On his hand, the original ring that had set the journey in motion gleamed softly in the starlight. Clara wore an identical one, recreated by the same craftsman with the same inscription. "Forever yours, 12/6/2/10. "You know what I think sometimes?" Raphael commented, looking up at the sky. "That everything happened exactly as it was supposed. To every challenge, every separation, every moment of fear, They all led us to this exact point. To our own happy ending, Clara finished. Sarah yawned, exhaustion finally overcoming her after such an intense day. It's not an ending, she murmured sleepily. It's just the beginning of another story. Raphael and Clara exchanged glances over their sleeping daughter's head. She was right, as her precocious wisdom often was. This was not an ending, but a new beginning, a new covenant, not just between husband and wife, but between them and the world around them. A commitment to transform pain into purpose, privilege into responsibility, and love into action. As they carried the sleeping Sarah to her room, passing through the now silent gardens that hours before had been the scene of so much joy, they both felt the same comforting certainty. The true treasure was not in the mansion, the companies, or the projects, but in the invisible bonds that united them, the true alliance that no adversity could break. And beneath the starry sky, the Anders mansion, once a monument to power and